So how do you find good stocks? What is a way to find good stocks that doesn't take a lot of time, doesn't take a lot of expertise, and will get you to those stocks that can beat the market and help your portfolio do really well? Well, in this video, I'm going to walk you through the difference between good companies and good stocks. I'll show you the simple indicator that I use to avoid weak stocks and how I can find strong stocks in just minutes using a powerful tool that I've created. I'll also show you how to eliminate stocks that don't have great potential. And through that process, we're going to find 3 stocks that have some pretty good potential for you to consider. All right, well, let's begin with this concept of good stock versus good company. Now, we know those good companies that are out there: Nvidia, Apple, General Motors. These are well-run, long-standing companies that are very profitable, have good management, don't have a lot of debt. And these sorts of companies are, in the sense of the word, good. But does that mean they're good stocks? Well, the key thing about what makes a stock good is what it does after you buy it. If you buy Nvidia and it goes up after you buy it, then it's a great stock. If it goes down after you buy it, well, then it's not so great. And if we take a quick look at the chart of Nvidia, you can see that this very great company has actually not performed all that well over the last few months. Now, in the last few years, it's performed great. And so the context also relates to time. If you're a long-term investor and you bought Nvidia back here, then you're pretty happy. If you're a short-term trader and you bought Nvidia up in here, well, you're not all that happy because it's gone down since. So always want to keep in mind the difference between a good company and a good stock. Now, I have a simple indicator to help me avoid weak stocks. I call it the sentiment stock score. And what we look for with the sentiment stock score is for it to be above 60. Now, this is my website, Stockscores.com. This is free to look at the stock scores for any North American stock. And here you can see the sentiment stock score. And on this chart below, it's the green line. So you can see that that green line has dipped below 60 in the last few months. Whereas when the stock was really doing well here, for the most part, when the stock was climbing, it was above 60. When it was going sideways, it fell a little bit below 60. And you can get the stock score for any stock. You can punch an Apple symbol and take a look at the stock score for Apple, which is just below 60 right now. And the stock really hasn't performed all that well over the last little while. You could pull up a Canadian stock like Suncor, and there you can see its stock score as well. So it's a nice way to put stocks into 2 piles. Those that are doing well and those that are underperforming. Here's Tesla. When the stock was doing well, the stock score, the green line, was above 60. In the last couple of months, Tesla hasn't been doing all that well, and it's fallen below 60. So this is, again, just a simple way to put stocks into 2 different piles. And I'm going to use this in a minute to try to find some stocks that have good potential. So how do we find stocks quickly using the tools of Stockscores, the ones that I created? Well, we have a tool on Stockscores called a market scan. Now, this is a member-only tool, but I'm going to walk you through how I use it to find opportunity. Now, we have all of these preset scans, and we're not going to use those today. We're going to do something really simple using this stock score concept. We're going to say sentiment stock score of at least 60, and then we want stocks that have done well over the last 10 days, stocks that are getting the attention of the buyers. So up at least 10% over the last 10 days. And because we don't want really illiquid stocks, we're going to say that they have to have traded at least 2,000 times on Friday. I'm doing this video on a Saturday. All right, so then we're going to run the market scan. It went through the entire US and Canadian stock market, and it found over 100 candidates. So my search was limited to just 100 stocks. I'm going to go back and increase the number of rows to return from 100, and we're going to max it out at 999. Let's see how many stocks actually went up more than 10% last week with a score of, oh, it's exactly 100. That's interesting. All right, now we're going to look through these charts to see what chart patterns they have. And this is where I'm going to teach you a little bit about how to read charts and determine whether some are good and some are bad. All right, so the first concept that I've talked about in past videos is this idea of optimism versus pessimism. If there are rising bottoms on the chart, you have optimism. And that's one of the things that the sentiment stock score looks for. So here we have optimism. Here we had pessimism because the tops were falling from left to right. And during that time, the sentiment stock score was low. When the bottoms start rising, you can see the sentiment stock score gets better. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is resistance. Notice how this stock repeatedly hit 50 cents and it couldn't break through. What that meant is that the investors in the market didn't think that the fundamentals of this company were worth more than 50 cents a share until Thursday when the stock broke out through that ceiling price. So there's a lot of good things in this chart. Now, I always like to take a look at the 3-year weekly chart to see where longer term resistance is. And there you can see that this stock has been in a pessimistic cycle for most of the last 3 years. It's only in the last few months that it started to build optimism. Now notice that there's a price peak right there, and that is what we're going to call resistance. It's a ceiling price that limits upside. And because we hit that ceiling on Thursday and then fell back on Friday, the weekly chart shows that it did not break through that resistance. Now you can see that there's a lot of volume trading in the last few months, and that tells you that the stock's being accumulated, but it still needs to get through that resistance. So, long story short, good company, but not one that I would be willing to buy. Now we're going to go through these a little quicker, and I will pause and explain some things when I see them. So on this particular chart, I have a cycle of rising bottoms. That's great. But recently, the upward trend line was just broken, and that makes this resistance, and therefore the stock is likely to just go sideways. So I go to the next one. Here is a stock that has well-defined resistance here. It has optimism, and it broke out on Tuesday of last week. I can see that there was strong volume, and my sentiment stock score is in the right spot. So now I'm going to take a look at the 3-year chart and figure out where the next level of resistance is. Anywhere there is a price peak, there is going to be resistance. And so I can identify that as resistance, and the problem with buying it now is there's not enough upside to resistance for how much downside there is to support. So as much as I think this would be a good stock to hold, I'm not interested in buying it here. This stock has got too much volatility and breaking up into pessimism. How do I see pessimism? Because the tops are falling. So let's go to the next one. We're going to get to some good ones here in a moment. HRTX. Here's a stock that switched from pessimism to optimism. And then last week it broke through resistance, and you can see that the volume got a little higher. So the daily chart's pretty good. Let's take a look at the 3-year weekly chart. Problem. We've got resistance here, and that limits my upside to less than 2 to 1. I always like the distance to the upside to be 2 times the distance to the downside. And this one's not quite there. So we're going to move on. Now I'm going to go through these a little quicker, and I'll pause when I think that there's something good or something to discuss in more detail. Here is XERS, good upward momentum, but it's not really starting the upward trend. This stock is a good hold, but the 3-year chart shows that it's been trending up for almost a year, and therefore it feels like it's a little late to the party. This is what we want. See how this stock broke out through resistance from optimism with abnormal price action? That's the perfect setup. Now, it's too late now, but if you were running these market scans every day, then in the 3rd week of January, you would have said, hey, this is exactly what we're looking for. The sentiment stock scores have been strong for some time. It broke out through resistance from optimism with abnormal activity. This is one of the simple formulas that I use to identify strong stocks. Let's keep looking. So that one, not great, too much volatility there. And sometimes these stocks, they may not be good on the daily or weekly chart, but they might very well have been great day trades, for example. You can trade stocks in many different time frames. And so a chart that's pretty good on the daily might be a great chart for the day trader where they're looking at, a 1-minute chart going back 2 days. Let's take a little closer look at this one, ASLE. So this is pretty good. And the reason it's pretty good is it's switching from falling tops, so pessimism through here. Notice the stock scores were bad during that period. And now it's switching to optimism because the bottoms are rising. There's resistance here, and we're breaking out through resistance this week. And there's a spike of volume. Stock scores are in a good spot. You can see the sentiment stock score is 74. And by the way, a 74 isn't really better than a 68. And actually, if the sentiment stock score gets too high, like over 85, it's usually meaning the stock is well into the upward trend and now it's only a hold. Also, we don't use the stock scores to identify exit points. We have other methods for that. Now, the one concern I have with this stock is where is the downward trend line? Because when I draw it like this, I want to make sure that I'm breaking the downward trend line, and I am. So this ASLE, I would say, has a 65% chance of going up in the next few months. And so I would give that a 6.5 out of 10. Let's keep looking. Not great, too late, but this one had a great breakout. Back here, optimism, resistance, low volatility, abnormal activity, spike of volume, stock scores in the right place, and look at how well it's done. If you're in that now, it's a hold, but I wouldn't buy it here because it's too late. So far, we found one good one. We're going to keep pounding through these charts here, looking for stocks that have good stock scores, good patterns, with enough upside to justify the risk. All right, let's take a look at this RKT on a 3-year time frame. I can see that it broke the downward trend line. It's okay, but I don't think it has enough upside. So let's keep going. Now, incidentally, this one here is an inverse ETF. This goes up when the market goes down. The market's been going down the last couple of weeks, and there you can see a way to make money when the market's going down. Some of these inverse ETFs are great alternatives. That one is an inverse of the Russell 2000, the small cap sector, which has really underperformed the overall market in the last little while. All right, let's take a little closer look at this. I'm going to go to 3-year, and there I can see breaking out through resistance from optimism. Stock scores above 60. You can see it's getting better. The volume is picking up last week, so that's a pretty good looking chart. HG, I'd give that a 6.5 out of 10 as well. What I don't like is I wish the volume was a little bit better. It doesn't look all that extreme this past week. You know, 1 day, 2 days, it was a little higher than normal. So it's pretty good, but not much higher than a 6.5. Now, I typically don't give stocks more than a 7 out of 10, meaning I don't think any trade has a greater than 70% chance of working. I'm always aware of the fact that some trades just don't work. Here's one, resistance here, breaking out, but there's some problems with this one. One of the rules that I like to look for is that it's breaking from low volatility. Low volatility is like quiet sideways trading. Well, this has got quite a bit of volatility, and that makes this less reliable. So I would give that one a 6 out of 10. Now the probability of that working is about a 60% chance. Now, how do I know these probabilities? Well, I've looked at charts for 35 years every single day, and you start to get a feel for these things having done it a lot. Anyone can learn how to do this, and I'm going to show you some things coming up soon where I'll teach you some of these methods in a longer session. I'll show you that in just a moment. But I just want to continue to get through these. We've had 2 good ones, and I'm pretty sure there's one more because I did these earlier. And I found 3 that I thought were pretty good. Let's take a look a little closer at this one. Probably too much volatility. Yep, and not enough upside. All right, this one looks pretty decent. HCI. You can see has strong resistance here, optimism, low volatility, breaking out. Volume could be a little better. I'd give that one a 6 out of 10. Sentiment stock score is a 75, and it's been strong for the last 4 or 5, maybe even 6 months, and the stock has done pretty well. So that's another one to consider. All right, now I said that I was going to show you some upcoming lessons where I can teach you more about this. I'm going to do 4 one-hour sessions. They're all free, and you can learn more about how to read charts, how to pick stocks, how to use the tools that I've created. Just go to the Stockscores homepage, cycle down to upcoming events, and there you can see them there. My effective way to analyze any stock in seconds is the first one on Tuesday, March 25th. Plus, another thing that I recommend you do is register for the free weekly email newsletter that I do. Each week, I pick stocks, I do lessons. Just click on this See More link, and you'll learn more about that there. If you've enjoyed this video, please click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and as always, trade well.